Welcome to our home.
Hi there, PJ here with the Godfather, JoeNerd, and our guest, Protoman from Proto Retro.
It almost sounds like PJ is getting a little tired.
I'm getting tired as well. Come on, we did.
Give him a drink.
Me and Protoman, we did. This is like our 12 or 14 video we did all day.
I still got energy.
You're right.
Yeah, it's okay. He's got more energy than me, but me, I need my meat, man. Okay, so this, I have no freaking idea what it is. So you know what, Protoman, you're my guest.
All right.
Take it away.
Well, first we'll do a little bit of history of what it's based on, and then we'll get into what it actually is. Back in 1984, Transformers did a line of mail order stuff, and they did a whole bunch of mail order things.
Oh, like the camera.
Well, a good example is Reflector.
I have two of them.
The Omnibots, and they also did a line of mail order stuff called the Powerdashers. And just like a whole bunch of other mail order stuff, you had to get those little robo points that were in the back that you cut out, and you sent them in, and you were randomly sent one of 3 Powerdashers. And there was Dasher Sky, Dasher Road, and I forget.
Actually, no, it's Drill Dasher.
Drill Dasher.
F1 Dasher. And
F1
Sky
Dasher.
Dasher.
Yeah, and they had like weird names and stuff, and they were based off of old Daikon molds, which were the exact same thing more or less. Minor some color changes here and there. So that was the history of that. What's interesting about this is actually a bootleg of it. But what's interesting about it is the original one, which is both the Daikon and the Hasbro release, actually has an open cockpit here that you could actually put in the driver.
For the little figure, yeah.
This one, what's interesting is they actually remolded it to encase it. I don't know why, because what's interesting is I actually have the F1 Dasher bootleg, and they didn't remold it. So it's weird, that, maybe just to give it more of a spacey kind of look or whatever. And we'll go into, it's just a basic space shuttle. What's amazing is the stickers are all intact. There's an M here.
It reminds me of something I've seen.
I don't know what
before.
the M is for, and it has robot written here, dynamic robot written on the wings. And then
it's very familiar.
Very simple. It's by the way, the reason why they were called Powerdashers is because they dash forward, because they were pullbacks. That was the.
Oh, they don't have the spring out auto transformation.
No, that was the jump starters.
Okay.
So very simple transformation, bada bing, bada boom, like that. Very, very simple. I wish I actually brought the original and I could compare it side by side. The difference in color is essentially all this
Put
big
a picture. No, put a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big block of yellow is replaced with the darker blue and stuff like that. And same thing with the red here. But the chrome is still the chrome, and amazingly the face sticker is still the same too. So at least that they kept that. But it's a very weird bootleg of it. And again, when Transformers came out, there was tons of bootlegs of Transformers going around because it was the shit. It was the hottest thing back in 84, 85. 86 was when its decline started, but it was absolutely huge. And the Powerdashers, which originally came out in 85, was the peak of Transformers.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you before, but I'll ask you now. Remember those Transformers that I found in Greece? The one that's called Boss? They were like soakers or something?
Yeah, you're talking about the UK Transformers. Yeah.
Why did they never made them in United States or something?
Well, here's the thing. The UK Transformers all came out way after Transformers was popular. To my knowledge, Boss was 89. So, yeah. And it's one of those things where they didn't make an effort to bring it over because Transformers was already dead. In 1989, there was another thing that was out that was way more popular than
That's
Transformers.
why they're so rare.
Ninja Turtles.
Oh, frig. Ninja Turtles.
So
yeah.
So no one really, I mean, hey, yeah, they could have brought over the UK stuff, but why would they? You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Like, there's actually Transformer video games that exist for the Nintendo, but they never brought them over because when the Nintendo came out and when it was really huge, which was the mid 80s to the late 80s,
It was a little too late.
Ninja Turtles was popular. And we all know Ninja Turtles for their Nintendo releases,
Yeah.
but we don't know Transformers. They exist, but we don't know it for that.
And to be honest, it was goddamn awful.
Well, yeah, like Mystery
Yeah.
of Convoy is one of the hardest one of the hardest games ever.
Oh,
let alone
boy.
Transformers.
Do you recall what company it was made by, the game?
Takara's in-house company, actually. Takara made at the time up until 1995, and then they became a third-party company. But for the longest time, Takara actually made video games. They had a video game-based company. Nintendo too. A lot of people don't know this about Nintendo. Nintendo was a toy company before they were a video game company.
Really?
And before that, they were a hotel company. And before
Right.
that, they were a card-making company that dates back to the 19th century Japan.
What the hell?
It
Huh.
goes really far back. But that's a whole other topic.
I do remember too that originally Nintendo they had a partnership with Mattel. I remember when I got my original 8-bit Nintendo, it had Mattel written on the box.
Originally, Nintendo, in order to get released in the market, because in 1983 was the video game crash, which is when video games were so bad that a whole bunch of companies were going out of business or on the brink of going out of business. And one good example of that was Atari. Because arcades were huge, games like Pac-Man came out and everything, but there was no way to port these beautiful arcade games, which were the size of refrigerators, because that's how technology was back then, you know, big refrigerator. They couldn't port these games into home consoles. Pac-Man was a bomb, got returned like crazy, almost made Atari go bankrupt. And then the biggest stake in the heart, which a lot of people in the video game industry know this story, was E.T.
Oh man, yes!
And E.T. was a disaster, and I actually owned that game. And
really?
I mean, it wasn't that bad. I remember as a kid playing it, although I do remember not knowing what I was doing. But I guess maybe as a kid I was less infuriated by that. But apparently a lot of people were. And video game crash happened in '83, and there was a lull period, and then video games were still huge in Japan. You know, they were still being, you know, evolutionary and everything. But by the time they reached essentially the mid-'80s, they wanted to bring Nintendo to America, but they couldn't bring it over unless they sold it as a toy, not a video game system. And that's also where Rob the Robot came in.
Oh yeah, I remember that damn thing with the top spin thing that it
By
dropped,
having Rob the Robot with the toy, with the system, excuse me, it was and with Mattel helping with some of their peripherals on the side. A good example, the famous Power Glove was created by Mattel.
Mama, yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but the famous Game Genie was Galoob.
Yes, I remember it was Galoob, yeah.
So there was a lot of third-party guys jumping on the train back then. And again, Takara, toy company in Japan, was doing the video game thing too. So it's, you know, that's how it all goes full circle, this conversation. But you know, a lot of us now, we associate, you know, it's a different thing. Back in the day, especially in the 90s and the late 80s, there was tons of different video game companies making systems. You had a choice between 3DO, you had a choice between the CDI, you had your Nintendo, you had your Sega Genesis, you had your Atari Jaguar. There was a lot of different companies. TurboGrafx 16 was still Sega though.
Oh yeah.
But like, you know, it's just a matter of, you had all these different companies per se that had all these different consoles and had all this selection, and all these different companies were other businesses too. You know, like CDI was what's it called there? I forget what was the company that owned CDI at the time, but there was tons of stuff. But anyways, that's the history of that per se.
So what else we have to say about this figure?
There's not much else we can say except it's just a slight remold of an original Transformer mail-away toy, so to speak. And it's very interesting though, but there's not much really that could be said outside of that, except that I mean, it was a very simple toy to begin with when it was an official release, but it's really cool. It's a piece of Transformers history that dates back from the late 70s, early 80s because of its Diaclon origins. But
it's really visually striking. I really like it.
I love Chrome. I'm a sucker for Chrome.
Yeah,
and
vac metallization
Chrome is always such an iconic thing of the 80s. It's, you know, with anything, especially Chrome that doesn't flake. Because a lot of 90s toys that have chrome, unfortunately didn't survive the test of time, but it's very weird how vac metal chrome like this somehow always manages to survive and never flake. Again, this toy here, I'm going to take a shot in the dark and guess that this was probably released, let's say the same year as the Powerdasher, so let's say 85, almost a 30-year-old toy.
Yeah, probably this is it's still from that batch that I got.
Yeah, exactly. Assuming everything's in that same era.
It was, definitely.
You know what I mean? So, and look at the stickers and everything. It held up. You know what I mean?
I think it depends probably on the hardness or the rigidness of the plastic that they actually vac metallized.
It actually tells something about the fact that this is a knockoff and the condition that it is.
Yeah, because there's a lot of official Transformer Beast Wars toys that in my personal collection I don't mess with my figures. but they suffer from chrome flaking just naturally, like
Yeah.
like a tree's leaves falling off it and fall. You know,
Is it because of the plastic was not rigid enough?
It's a multitude of things. Number one, the way that the chrome was applied to the body of it, because it's when you see chrome flaking, sometimes it's not so much the chrome, but the layer of color that makes the chrome have its color. If it's a red chrome, let's say, it's a layer of color that's put on it. That flakes off, and people associate that with the chrome flaking, but that's not usually the case. And then there's legitimate chrome flaking, which is like Beast Machine's Jetstorm. Again, a toy that was made in 2001.
Yeah.
You know, and yet suffers horribly from chrome flaking, to the point where you mess with the toy, you look at your hands and you're like, it's sparkly.
Another good example of that, I won't go on this too far, but in the Masters of the Universe Classics, figure that the Plasticjunky has right here is Hurricane Hordak. His chest plate is vac metallized gold, but Mattel, I don't know why the hell they did this. They didn't even use the proper plastic underneath. It's a very soft plastic with vac metallized on top of it. Like, what the hell were they thinking? You know, of course there's going to be problems. So.
Yeah, especially in the long run, because the soft plastic under probably is going to dry out.
Yeah, I really shudder to think of what that figure is going to look like in a decade from now, or maybe even a couple years, maybe.
Well, that's always another thing too. Is you know, a lot of toys today are being made with a short-term mentality in mind.
Oh, definitely. That's friggin' Mattel in a nutshell.
Yeah.
They're horrible for that.
Because soft plastic joints that are being found in a lot of Marvel Legends figures are another good example of, you know, figures that in a couple of years, when that soft plastic dries out, I'm going to be very curious if you could even move an arm or a leg without something snapping.
Man, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that's that.
As you've noticed, Plasticjunky has been surprisingly quiet. Who knows?
He actually ran off to
He's off making another toy deal as we speak.
So we'll have more stuff to talk about in a couple.
Yeah, so we're gonna wrap this up. So, what's your score on this?
You know what? The original Powerdashers I always loved, because I love stuff that has character, and you know, these were figures that didn't have character in the original show. They were given little bios by Dreamwave comic books, but you know, not much was fleshed out in terms of actual fiction. But I always dig these guys, and I always like the underdog Transformers that didn't get a lot of love.
The obscure.
Yeah,
I really like that too.
Yeah, and so, you know, I give it a 4 out of 5, also because it's a remold, and not a lot of bootlegs do that.
All right then. So thank you, Protoman, for joining us on this segment.
Yeah.
Thank you, JoeNerd, for your input, and Plasticjunky in spirit, where he is right now. So Godfather here.
4 bananas out of 5.
So signing off, and we'll see you next time. Peace.